he cheated on his wife, and you cannot do that, I tell you. I say you cannot cheat on your wife, even though I cheat on my own. Even though my wife cheats on me with a man that looks suspiciously like he has the same skin color as a certain Martin Luther King Jr., and I watch him from when I call the husband chair do that. It's not technically cheating because I'm in favor of it, but we like to role play that I'm not. Anyway, what was I talking about? A lot of the blood left my brain. I really do not care that any of the so-called alleged, I don't even know if it's accurate, any negative things that Martin Luther King Jr. might have done. Okay? I think smearing the man who fought for the liberation of black people in America, most popular civil rights leader in contemporary American history, is just not going to be enough to throw people off the scent of the Trump-Epstein connection. You know, if I was the president of the United States of America, and I happened to be included in, let's just say, a whole bunch of files pertaining to a certain Jeffrey, not Dahmer, different Jeffrey, I probably wouldn't want people to talk about it, especially not if I was part of the party that proclaims to be so in favor of protecting the children and family values, all this kind of thing. If I was the president and I happened to be photographed with a certain Jeffrey on multiple occasions, videotaped being all friendly with them, if the guy told me that I was one of his best friends, and in fact, we shared little love letters, you know, I just wouldn't want people to talk about that. And so therefore, as of time of recording, July 20th, the Trump administration releases FBI records on MLK Jr. despite his family's opposition. Kind of seems irrelevant right now, don't you think? You know, if I was president and my already horrible name was getting its nose rubbed in the dirt, in the mud, by people who genuinely just want the truth and want to see the victims of said Jeffrey be made whole, and the perpetrators that victimized those women, and it would turn out often girls, children, you would want those perpetrators to see the full force of the US justice system. But instead of that, we're just gonna get who gives a nobody cares files about Martin Luther King Jr. Because what better way for a Republican politician, the sitting president, Donald Trump, to defend himself against seemingly very credible accusations of being a PDF file downloader, since we're early on in the video, than to smear the good name of one of the most popular civil rights leaders in American history. It's just it's a long storied tradition of the right wing doing this, because the right wing conservatives, they don't like Martin Luther King Jr. He was a very strong proponent of a progressive idea at the time, and seemingly still a progressive idea today, that black people, Africans who were stolen from Africa, brought to the United States of America for their labor to be exploited in a system called chattel slavery to build the country and make a bunch of white people very wealthy, eventually giving birth to a whole new generation of people that do not know where their roots come from, do not know anything but America, and are born into that same system of slavery, often at the hands of the slave owners assaulting them. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't really like that. And at the time, post the ostensible abolition of slavery by the 13th Amendment, which still allows for slavery if you've been convicted of a federal crime, so it's been, you know, the whole group of people that can be enslaved in the United States of America has actually been expanded. White people even have been enfranchised into that system. There's a bit of diversity that the Republicans are very much in favor of, and conservatives generally. But, you know, the over-policing of black and brown communities tends to lead to the over-conviction of a variety of non-white people into said system of federal crimes. I'm rambling. This is just a distraction. I don't give a damn what's in the Martin Luther King Jr. FBI records, and I don't think anybody should. Back when King was still alive, the right wing was smearing him as a philanderer, and he was, god damn it, he was He cheated on his wife, and you cannot do that, I tell you. I say you cannot cheat on your wife, even though I cheat on my own. Even though my wife cheats on me with a man that looks suspiciously like he has the same skin color as a certain Martin Luther King Jr., and I watch him from when I call the husband chair do that. It's not technically cheating because I'm in favor of it, but we like to role play that I'm not. Anyway, what was I talking about? A lot of the blood left my brain. I don't give a damn. I really do not care that any of the so-called alleged, I don't even know if it's accurate, bullshit about any negative things that Martin Luther King Jr. might have done. Okay? That was for the justice system to figure out, and unfortunately he was taken from this earth way too early in a politically motivated assassination, a terrorist act, and all that's left at that point is his legacy of fighting for civil rights, for equality for black people in the United States of America, and equality for all people when it comes to their economic position, because he wanted poor people to no longer be exploited by CEOs, bosses, the wealthy, the people that hire American citizens and even undocumented immigrants and so on and so forth. He wanted it so that they would have a more equitable time in their jobs, to get paid more, to have better working conditions, things that right-wingers generally don't like, because the entire project of republicanism in the United States of America and conservatism broadly is to make sure that the wealthiest people in the world and in this country keep as much of your money that you created off of your labor, the time that you literally sold to your employer, in exchange for money from them that is not nearly enough for you to pay your bills and not nearly enough in comparison to how much money you're making for that employer. The selling of parts of your soul in order to make the already richest people in the country just a little bit richer. And they're not doing anything good with that money, they're just sitting on it. He didn't want poor people of all stripes, of all colors, of all creeds, to have to suffer the indignity of being exploited based on their class position. It's speculation on my part, but I seem to think that given his history of wanting to liberate black people from the exploitation that they suffered, he probably had a bit of empathy for anybody, not just black people, who were suffering under a kind of labor exploitation, which was, you know, the law of the land for so long in the United States of America, specifically in regards to black people, but also everybody else who had to work a job. It's abundantly clear that this is just being released because the Trump administration is absolutely desperate to get people to stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein and the myriad connections Trump had to him. He's suing the Wall Street Journal. This you've probably already heard about. From July 17, 2025, Jeffrey Epstein's friends sent him bawdy letters for a 50th birthday album. One was from Donald Trump, the president currently of the United States of America. So because we live in hell and it's paywalled, even though it's very newsworthy, I had to look at the Majority Report video on it because I remembered watching it and there being a text transcript on the goddamn screen. So essentially, Trump's letter was written, he crudely doodled the silhouette of a woman. So there must be more to life than having everything. The note began, Donald, yes there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald Trump says, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Who the hell is ever saying that? You're crazy for that one. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey says, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. And then Trump ends the letter with, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. And may every day be another wonderful secret. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was the president of the United States, and it came out that I had written a love letter to one of the most prolific child traffickers out there, hung out with him all the time, was in pictures and video with him all the time, and then this letter comes out, and I wrote, quote, and may every day be another wonderful secret. I would wonder if the people reading this in the American public would have some questions as to what those secrets could be, you know? Maybe, you know, they have like a secret handshake that they do. Or something. Who's to say what it is? Even members of the MAGA movement who have an unquestionable loyalty to Donald Trump, they, like, I was almost going to say anthropomorphize him, which I guess might be accurate because I don't know how human he actually is, as like a father figure for themselves. Even they have been giving Trump a bit of shit, and it's making a lot of them question how much they can believe this guy. And the reason why that this is the issue that's causing that and not any other of the billions of lies that Trump has told to his own base in order to fearmonger to get them to vote for him and give him power so he can give more money to the wealthy, make your Meemaw have to work until she's dead by being the president, a member of the party that wants to raise the retirement age for Social Security, wants to gut Medicare, Medicaid, wants to essentially make everybody's life as bad as possible in order to get all of that money that was previously being spent, and there was not enough money being spent on the social safety net programs that allowed for people that weren't born to a wealthy father like he was able to make ends meet and get by, just to give all that money to the very wealthy that already have more money than God, so you have to work longer hours and worse working conditions for less wages. The list goes on. This is a bridge too far for a lot of them, and the reason is because this is actually one conspiracy that isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's just a conspiracy. There was people conspiring, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, seems like even Donald Trump is implicated in this in a variety of ways. And he even ran on releasing the Epstein files because he or someone in his campaign knew that that's something that would energize the swath of voters that might vote for him. And they did. But this is something they actually care about. They do not care about the well-being of everyday people. They don't even care about the well-being of themselves if they're poor people that happen to vote for him. A whole bunch of propaganda has gone into them being willing to vote against their own best interests. But this is one thing that they actually give a damn about. And I don't think it's because they care about protecting the children or whatever. I think it's genuinely because it's a conspiracy that is so fundamental to right-wing conspiracism, and one of them that actually has a fair amount of evidence to back it up as compared to a whole bunch of other conspiracy theories that the right believes in and pushes on a daily basis, that this is not simply going to go away for him. This came out July 18, 2025. The FBI was told to flag mentions of Trump in Epstein files, Durbin alleges. The FBI allegedly instructed agents to, quote, flag any mention of President Donald Trump while reviewing files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein earlier this year, according to a letter sent Friday by Senator Richard Durbin to the heads of the Justice Department and FBI. Durbin, the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, said his office had received information that roughly 1,000 FBI personnel were put on 24-hour shifts in March to comb through approximately 100,000 documents connected to Epstein. Those agents, Durbin wrote, were instructed to identify and set aside any materials that referenced Trump. Now, this comes out after the Trump administration had people like influencers, I think Chaya Raichik of Libs of TikTok was one of them, hold like binders that were ostensibly the Epstein files. Attorney General Pam Bondi literally said that she had the Epstein files on her desk for review to be able to release them. Then it comes out that Trump is in those files so many times that they can't really release it even piecemeal, and they have a whole squadron put together to flag anytime Trump is mentioned, which, like, if it was only a couple times, you probably wouldn't need a whole team working 24-hour shifts to find every time Trump was mentioned, you know? So it seems like many times he's mentioned in the Epstein files. Doesn't really look good for the president. So, you know, the files, they don't exist, or they were a hoax invented by the Democrats, or, you know, look over there, there's a scary non-white person, be scared or something. After immense pressure from his own base and feeling something that he probably hasn't felt for a long time, which is the political base that, like them or not, Trump does seem to actually care about the approval of. He was probably starved for attention as a child from his father, and he really does enjoy the attention he gets from his base of supporters. His rabid cult that will follow him and support him in whatever he does. The fact that they have even betrayed him in this moment really gets to him, especially in his old age and in his apparently declining health. So he's been desperately trying to move the spotlight off of him and his connections to Epstein, and obviously, like I said before, releasing the FBI records on Martin Luther King Jr. is just one method of distracting from that. The other is saying that the files didn't exist, throwing Pam Bondi under the bus, a whole bunch of stuff. And then this comes out. The allegation raises new questions about whether political considerations have shaped how the Trump administration has handled the ongoing review of Epstein-related evidence. Durbin's letter, addressed to Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, seeks answers about who gave the flagging directive, what happened to the materials once flagged, and whether other individuals were similarly singled out. because obviously they have to release something when it comes to these files. They ran on it, but for once, the Republican base of supporters is actually holding them to account for the first time ever. So essentially, they've employed a goddamn crisis team to work 24-hour shifts to look for any mention of Trump in these files, of which they needed a lot of people and a lot of man-hours to find all of them, because there are seemingly so many, because they want to release a heavily redacted version of the files, or selectively release pieces of it that omit references to the president, you know? And at this point, he might be mentioned in the damn thing so many times that I don't even know if it would make sense. Like, I don't know if it would read correctly with the amount of redactions you'd have to make to remove Donald Trump from Jeffrey Epstein's life and the files about it and his many crimes. Like, it's I don't know that it's possible. This effort, Durbin wrote, was haphazardly supplemented by hundreds of FBI New York field office personnel off of your taxpayer dollars, by the way, instead of making it so that you can send your kids to childcare without having to pay thousands of dollars to do it so you can go to work. In a lot of other countries, you know, that's subsidized by the government. Instead of having the government use that money to help you pay your medical bills, instead of, you know, going bankrupt because you got sick, they're spending it on FBI payroll to hide all of the affiliations that Trump may have had in the Epstein files with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of cool stuff here. Many of whom lacked the expertise to identify statutorily protected information regarding child victims and child witnesses, or properly handle Freedom of Information Act requests. Quote, my office was told that these personnel were instructed to, quote, flag any records in which President Trump was mentioned, he added. The Illinois Democrat also questioned the timeline of the review process, noting that despite tens of thousands of personnel hours, the Justice Department took, quote, more than 3 additional months to announce in a July 7th memo that there was, quote, no incriminating client list among the materials. He requested a detailed explanation of how that conclusion was reached and whether it matched what agents observed during the March document review. Durbin's letter comes amid renewed pressure on Bondi to release more of the Epstein documents and so on and so forth. It's not looking good for him, and thank God for that. The one time that the Republican base is actually going to hold their party and their president to account, it's over goddamn Jeffrey Epstein. I'll take what I can get at this point. The only problem here that I see is that the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and allegedly perhaps even the president, will not see justice, in my estimation. And the closest facsimile of justice that they might be able to receive is the embarrassment that Donald Trump and his administration are suffering at the hands of this information and news coming out. Because I highly doubt, at least under the Trump administration, that any of the victims are going to get restitution. It seems unlikely to me, because from the jump, Donald Trump and the Republican Party have only cared about this insofar as they could use it against the Democrats because of Bill Clinton and his PDF file ass. It's a long time coming for that man to go. He's getting old. And also to whip people in the voter base into a frenzy to come out and vote for him. That's the only reason they cared about it. They don't care about it to give justice to anybody that was victimized. They don't care. In fact, there might be a fair amount of Republican politicians who are in those files as well. Who's to say? The Republican Party has never really been particularly good on protecting children. They're overwhelmingly the amount of states that still allow for corporal punishment, aka the teacher in a school can spank a child if they are acting out. That is just child abuse. That's simply what it is. There has never been a study that has shown that spanking or anything like that has ever been beneficial to the development of a child. And in fact, studies have shown the opposite, that it makes their prospects going forward, suffering that abuse, growing up, even worse. They become more likely to be aggressive in their future lives, and so on and so forth. It's literally just abuse. There is no benefit for it, but a lot of Republican states, a lot of red states, still have laws on the books that allow for it, and have even gone so far as to suggest that some states that don't have those laws on the books should, as well as being in favor of quote-unquote conversion therapy, which has just been shown to be torture for any kind of LGBTQIA plus youth. It's also literally just child abuse. The Republican Party has so many members of its party that have been accused of, admitted to, or have investigations against them of crimes against children. The idea that they have ever given a fuck about the well-being of children is laughable. They are the biggest proponents of child labor. They are the biggest proponents of feeding children a whole bunch of lies when it comes to the education system, and their want to rewrite history, their anger whenever the actual history of the United States of America, the fact that it was founded on a genocide of the native people in North America and was built by the enslaved peoples that were stolen from Africa, all of that they do not want taught to children, because they want to be able to groom them into their right-wing ideological worldview and want them to ignore reality so that maybe one day they can go back to those times that they have lost the fight to conserve, you know? They've never given a fuck about the well-being of children, and any time they bring up the Epstein files is to use as a political bludgeon against the Democrats because of Bill Clinton. That's the only reason they've ever talked about it. So they were never going to actually release the list, especially given the fact that Trump is in it apparently more times than a single person would be able to find in a 24-hour shift. But the base is actually holding their feet to the fire on this. The only facsimile, like I say, of justice that the victims could possibly get is to have people continually embarrass Donald Trump and the Republican Party and any other person who victimized children and even adult women in this trafficking ring that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were conducting, is to continue to embarrass those perpetrators as much as possible by talking about it as much as possible, by pointing it out as much as possible. You know, Nancy Pelosi came out on some program and talked about how, oh, the Epstein thing, it's a distraction or whatever, yada, 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 from kitchen table issues. The idea that one of the biggest names and most powerful people in the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, would come out and, in my view, in my opinion, defend in a bipartisan way because of the Democrats that might be implicated in that, who I also want to see be met with the full extent of the law and the consequences of it, like Bill Clinton, come out with a defense for those people in that way is disgusting to me. Some have speculated that maybe it was a 4D chess move, and the fact that Pelosi is, you know, ignoring it is only going to add fuel to the fire, because then MAGA and right-wingers and Republicans are going to be like, oh, well, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want it to come out, so we need to pressure Trump to release it even harder. That's a funny idea. Maybe that's the case. For some reason, I don't think that she's smart enough for that to have been the case, and even if it is, the way that it looks is not particularly good. I promise you that the fact that people in this country and the world over, but particularly this country, can get away with the most heinous, godless crimes imaginable on the basis of their bank account, of their class position, I promise you, is a kitchen table issue. This is a very popular topic among normal people, because either it's, you know, drama and a spectacle, which is not a good way to look at it, or they really don't like seeing children victimized in that way, and or they don't like that if you're very rich you can get away with insane crimes like that. That's a class issue. That's an issue that poor people, everyday people, are going to care about. Workers are going to care about, because the law should apply to everyone equally. You shouldn't be able to just pay a fine or hire super expensive lawyers to get out of that. It's not looking good for him. And, you know, there's no reason not to keep the pressure on. This is a bipartisan issue at the current moment, anyway. The fact that the Trump administration is trying to cover this up begs the question as to why. And the fact that Donald Trump's name needed to be flagged in the files and then it ended up not even being released, I feel like tells you a lot more than you would need to see in order for your brain to make a bunch of connections, you know? Like, the administration really bungled this one. I think smearing the man who fought for the liberation of black people in America and who now is universally beloved as a freedom fighter, even though at the time that he was actually protesting, people didn't seem to like him very much, or I should say leading protests. Smearing the assassinated, in a politically motivated hit, most popular civil rights leader in contemporary American history is just not going to be enough to throw people off the scent of the Trump-Epstein connection. It's a bold strategy, but I don't think it's going to work out for him.